You know, sometimes it's really hard not to gloat.
On February 4th, 2018, The Cloverfield Paradox premiered on Netflix mere moments after it was first advertised during the Super Bowl. This was the movie that promised to tie everything together. At long last, our lingering questions about Cloverfield and 10 Cloverfield Lane would finally be answered, or so the trailer promised.
This turned out to be a lie. The Cloverfield Paradox had no answers to offer, and it was a terrible movie to boot.
When I had posted my review of the first Cloverfield, I had expressed my skepticism that there was any connectivity between the films, or that J.J. Abrams actually had the answers he claimed to, but many were those who told me about the augmented reality games and the upcoming third entry which would have all the answers I sought. Well, so much for that.
There was a small part of me that wanted this video to just be 20 minutes of me saying I told you so. I'm only human. Honestly though, I never entertained this thought very seriously, because it's not the fault of the fans that this movie was terrible. No, I think we all know who is really to blame.
Honestly, lots of my frustration with the Cloverfield Paradox has little to do with its poor attempts at retroactively creating a shared universe. Predominantly, it stems from the horrible structuring, irritating contrivances, and asinine character choices which exist in the script regardless of anything else.
The poor execution of the mystery stuff is still frustrating, but honestly, I kind of expected it. In fact, we all should have expected it, because that's what J.J. Abrams does. It's what he's done from the very beginning, and I can prove it too.
Abrams' directorial debut was the third Mission Impossible movie, appropriately entitled Mission Impossible 3. This is widely considered one of the better MI movies, mostly because it's the most character-driven, and I agree that it's good, but there's one moment in it that lays bare the J.J. Abrams method of mystery telling, and we all somehow missed it the first time.
Even I missed it. Why would I even have been looking for it? It was his first movie, after all.
Throughout the film, the heroes are attempting to stop the villain from obtaining the rabbit's foot.
What is the rabbit's foot? Well, that's a good question.
At various points in the film, people speculate about what it could be. It might be a biochemical weapon, or it might be a computer virus, but no one is really sure. All we know is that the bad guy can't have it. Then at the end, after the day has been saved, we get this little conversation between Tom Cruise and Lawrence Fishburne.
Rabbit's foot. What is it?
Promise me you'll stay, I'll tell you.
And it's never been brought up again. Despite multiple sequels, we still don't know what the rabbit's foot is.
Now true, the rabbit's foot is a MacGuffin, so what it is really doesn't matter that much. But in regards to the bigger picture, this is quite significant. This final conversation is all but a blatant admittance by Abrams that he had no intention of answering this question at all. Like I said, it was right there, and we missed it.
Then again, one could say the opinions of fictional characters aren't always the opinions of the artist, and that maybe this was just meant to be a light-hearted subversion of some kind, not meant to be taken seriously. Perhaps it wasn't. But how do you explain JJ's TED Talk?
You know, I could probably make a whole video devoted just to picking this TED Talk apart, as there are some things he says that make me wonder how much he really understands about writing in general. For our purposes, though, consider these quotes in which he speaks about how much he values the idea of not knowing the answer. Quotes such as, "I started thinking about times when mystery is much more engaging than knowledge," or "the withholding of information is much more engaging." These are not from a movie, but quotes straight from the horse's mouth. Here is a blatant admittance that J.J. Abrams values the thrill of not knowing the answer to a mystery rather than the satisfaction of having solved it. And looking at his body of work, he sticks to that idea religiously, even at the expense of everything else.
I'm sure we all remember Lost, the series that went from TV's most revolutionary show to its most frustrating in just 2 seasons.
That show started with a handful of mysteries, and as it progressed, it introduced more mysteries. And more still. Mysteries began piling on top of each other, oftentimes with conflicting evidence which was impossible to make sense of.
Those who didn't give up on the show early stuck around to see how it could possibly tie all of these things together into a single satisfying conclusion.
By the end, though, everyone involved in the writing process had given up trying to untangle the knot they had woven, resulting in one of the biggest letdowns in TV history.
I've already said my piece on the original Cloverfield, but the pattern of viral marketing was continued with Super 8.
There was another ad campaign focused on the mystery of the alien creature on the train, and another augmented reality game focused entirely on the alien creature. Yet the alien creature turned out to be the least important part of the movie.
This, therefore, was a trick. A grand illusion designed to make you think there was a greater mystery where there wasn't one, just to get butts in theater seats. It was very clever marketing, but at the same time, it was really underhanded.
Star Trek 2009 didn't really have much of a mystery to it, but Star Trek Into Darkness really built up the mystery of its central villain.
Everyone involved in the production was very tight-lipped about the villain's true identity, which they now realize was a huge mistake.
Upon learning that the villain was just Khan, a character who was also poorly executed even without the mystery, fans were not pleased. Even non-fans wondered what the point of the secrecy was beyond just having a twist for the sake of it.
Basically, it was another trick designed to lure people into the theater. Only this one was especially pointless because it was Star Trek. Star Trek has a built-in audience anyway, so using this kind of underhanded tactic was really pointless.
Speaking of which, we then of course have Star Wars The Force Awakens, which, in addition to being derivative, poorly executed, and unnecessarily political behind the scenes, was basically 2 hours of setup. It was filled with all manner of mysteries and loose ends that were obviously meant to be explored in subsequent films.
Now yes, technically it was Rian Johnson who undermined all of that build-up with The Last Jedi, but I honestly can't say I believe Abrams would have done much better had he stuck around.
By now, you cannot deny the pattern evident in the man's work. He overplays mysteries which aren't important, and on those rare occasions where he solves them, the result is underwhelming. So in a way, you could say the Cloverfield paradox was an inevitability, the logical end result of what happens when mystery box storytelling plays out to the end. You know, in case you forgot about Lost.
Lots of people continue to insist that this movie really does tie everything together, but I have yet to find a consensus as to how.
I've seen people say each movie is definitely set in its own separate reality, and I've seen people say each movie is definitely set in the same reality.
We get a shot of a Slusho bobblehead at the beginning, and a shot of Clover at the end, and that's meant to make us think there's a connection. But the movie does nothing else to explain what that connection is. Really though, the truth is much simpler. It's all just smoke and mirrors.
The trailers promised us answers, but instead the film only creates more confusion and calls everything from the previous ARGs into question. First, Cloverfield and 10 Cloverfield Lane had no connection and were just part of an anthology. Then they were two different stories from the same reality. Now they might not be the same reality after all, or maybe they are, depending on who's talking. We're also still left with the question of what that UFO at the end of the first movie is.
I can actually solve this mystery definitively though. Here, let's zoom in.
There, you see? It's a carrot dangling on the end of a string just out of reach. A perfect metaphor, I would say.
Like I said, there was a small part of me that wanted to gloat about being right, that this was all just a huge snipe hunt. But the more time passes, the more I start to feel bad for the people still trying to put everything together. It's like they're thinking, there's no way it could possibly be this bad, so it all must be part of the show somehow.
We're supposed to see the obvious wires holding up the magician as he levitates, and they were supposed to snap and drop him on his head, and he's supposed to be lying there motionless as the stagehands check his pulse and call the paramedics. All part of the show, right? There's just something we're not seeing yet, right? We're not really wasting our time on someone who doesn't know what he's doing, right? Right? Ultimately, this movie is the reason why I'm now entirely done with Bad Robot and J.J. Abrams.
This has literally been going on since 2006, and I'm sick of it. Just because I can tell the Emperor has no clothes on doesn't mean I like staring at his junk.
I have no distaste for J.J. Abrams as a person. He honestly seems like a nice enough guy. As a storyteller, though, he's become stuck in a pattern from which he clearly has no intention of breaking, especially not as long as people continue indulging him to perpetuate it. Ergo, I can't indulge him anymore. I can't keep going back to his movies expecting that he'll get it right this time when he's shown no sign that he ever will. Of all the recent trends I've seen in Hollywood of late, those displayed in the Cloverfield paradox are the ones I'd rather didn't catch on.
Unless J.J. Abrams makes a genuine attempt to do things differently, I have to say that I'm done. If you guys still don't see an issue, I really don't know what else I can say. For your sake, though, I hope things do change, because if they don't, J.J. Abrams will just keep stringing you along forever. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer, signing off. I'd also like to add that since I too am working on a mystery series in the form of the New Aberdeen tapes, I promise I am not going to pull an Abrams on you. Or at the very least, I'm gonna try my hardest not to.